Welcome to episode 47 of the Perrysburg Podcast. I'm your host, Kim Newlove. The Perrysburg Podcast is an informational podcast for prospective, new, and current Perrysburg, Ohio residents. We talk about what's in Perrysburg and why people like to live here. You can find the show notes on perrysburgpodcast.com. Today's episode is about Rotary Community Park, which I typically just shorten to Rotary Park. This episode also includes some insights about the playground at Rotary Park from Maggie Dreier and Jennifer Engelmann from the Ability Center of Greater Toledo. Stay tuned for our interview. That'll be in the second half of this episode. The video version of this episode with pictures and videos from the park is available on YouTube. The easiest way to find the link to that video is in the description for this episode on your podcast player. I hope that helps. Just click the link and go. Let's get started. This episode has 3 parts. Part 1 is general information. We've got background information about the park, like the street address, where to park, and more. Then part 2 is features of Rotary Community Park. And then part 3 is my interview with Maggie and Jennifer from the Ability Center. Part 1 starts now. Let's do this. Rotary Park is one of Perrysburg's newer parks. It is located at 26350 Fort Meigs Road in Perrysburg. The entrance is located across the street from Fort Meigs Elementary School, but you can also walk to the park through the back of the Fort Meigs YMCA parking lot, which is located on Eckel Junction Road here in Perrysburg. Now, where should you park? I would park at the Fort Meigs Road entrance to Rotary Park. There's plenty of parking in front of each of the major features, which are the tennis courts, the shelter house, the playground, the pickleball courts, and the walking path. If you are watching the YouTube video, you can see what I'm talking about. Plenty of parking. Now, according to the City of Perrysburg's website, the Perrysburg Rotary Club partnered with the City of Perrysburg to develop Rotary Community Park starting in 2008. The Wood County Park District, Wood County Plays, and a number of other sponsors have stepped up to build the park up to what we know it as today. Thank you all for sharing your time, your talent, and your treasures with the City of Perrysburg to build Rotary Park. It's a great park. Thank you. That ends part 1 of this episode. Next up is part 2, features. I came up with a list of 10 features to share. There are 5 major features, but I came up with a list of 10. I'll go through them one at a time. Let's start with the first thing that you will see when you pull into the park. Feature number 1 is a stone sign that says Perrysburg Rotary Community Park. The sign sits in a landscaped island of sorts with 4 flags. We've got the U.S. flag, the state flag for Ohio, the City of Perrysburg's flag, and the Rotary flag. I love flags, and my favorite number is 4. There are 4 flags, so I really like this feature. Feature number 2 is the tennis courts. There are 5 tennis courts with lights, so you can play after dark if you like. In the summer, you can play until 11. During the non-summer hours, 10 is the limit. Then I think the lights just turn off. Time to go home. There are benches covered with shade structures just outside the entrances to the tennis courts, so plenty of shaded space to sit and rest or wait for your court to become available. You'll also find a podium with a dedication plaque. So again, that's a podium with a dedication plaque from 2018. It dedicates the tennis courts to Rotary Park. There are also trash cans and a drinking fountain in the same area. These tennis courts are very popular with people of all ages, even children. Moving on to feature number 3, it is the shelter, which I call a shelter house. Inside the shelter house, there are 8 picnic tables, several electrical outlets, and a concrete floor. So again, there are picnic tables, electric outlets, and a concrete floor. There are a few lights in there, but I wouldn't exactly have any events there after dark. There are bathrooms and free Wi-Fi available at the shelter house too. I'll put a link to reserve the Rotary Park Shelter House in the show notes for episode 47 on perrysburgpodcast.com. Can you use the shelter if you don't reserve it? Yes, as long as there's nothing going on there, just walk up and use it. But if you need it for an event and you want to secure it for your group, contact the City of Perrysburg, reserve the shelter. Just a few more words about the shelter, then we'll move on. Please note that the bathrooms at the shelter are only open during warm weather months. Typically, this is late April through early October. Quick story for you. When my younger son, Derek, who's now 19, was younger, I used to tell him that they turned the drinking fountains at the city parks on for his birthday, which is April 19th, and then they would turn them back off for his half birthday, which is October 19th. Although that is not exactly true, it's almost true. They don't do it by the date, they do it by the weather. We all help our kids make sense of things in different ways, don't we? That was mine. All right, let's move on to feature number 4, the playground. There is a playground for people of all abilities at Rotary Park. This type of playground is sometimes called an inclusive playground. Inclusive playground. Now, when the weather allows, this is a very popular playground. I hardly ever see anybody there in the winter, but when the weather is nice, oh my goodness, there is a crowd there. It has the basics like swings and slides, but it also has so much more. If you're watching the YouTube video version of this episode, you're seeing some of the features, and I will share even more pictures and videos when Maggie and Jennifer talk about the playground in just a few minutes. Other features include a drinking fountain, some benches, trash cans, picnic tables, musical instruments, a merry-go-round of sorts, and wheelchair-friendly surfaces. That does it for feature number 4, the playground. Let's move on to number 5. Feature number 5 is a stone walking path. Round trip, the path around Rotary Park is 0.7 miles. Along the path, there are benches and a tribute sign to the Schipple family who used to farm the land on which Rotary Park currently sits. As you walk along the path, you can also see the open grassy fields that are still undeveloped. I believe that a number of soccer and rugby groups use those fields at Rotary Park during their seasons, spring, fall. Not sure who uses it when, but I have seen groups playing on those grassy fields. No permanent goalposts or chalk markings are in the grass as I record this on June 13th, 2024. Next up is feature number 6, the pickleball courts. These are incredibly popular, especially with the senior crowd. It's so fun to watch all the people, all the different groups use the pickleball courts here in Perrysburg. Inside Rotary Park, there are 8 pickleball courts with windscreens along the fences, and there are 4 sets of bleachers down the center with sunshades above them. The pickleball court rules are at the entrance to the courts, and there's also a podium at the entrance to the courts, and it has a dedication plaque from 2023. Feature number 7 is the rain garden along Fort Meigs Road. A lot of people don't really see this because it's not really in the center of the park like the pickleball courts or the walking path, but there is a rain garden along Fort Meigs Road. It's just north of the tennis courts. To learn more about the rain garden, read the sign at the entrance to the garden. Next up is feature number 8. It barely made the list, don't laugh at me, but it is a porta potty. In case you're wondering, what do people do when the shelter house bathrooms close? There's a porta potty, and it's right by the tennis courts when the shelter house bathrooms close for the year. It is not there right now as I publish this on June 14th of 2024, but it should return later this year. I'm not sure when you will listen to this, so it did make the list. Just in case you're curious, where's the bathroom? We're getting towards the end. Feature number 9 is a wooden information stand with signs. When the porta potty is in place, you'll find the wooden information sign right next to it. At the information sign, you will find general park regulations, information about the free public Wi-Fi that is courtesy of the City of Perrysburg, a QR code that will take you to the sign up for the City of Perrysburg's monthly newsletter, and information about lawn pesticide application at the park. Real quick, I'll share some of the general park regulations with you. These are right from the sign. Open dawn to dusk, excluding tennis, which is 11 p.m. during the summer and 10 p.m. during the school year. Park in designated areas only. No parking on the grass. No motor vehicles on the paths. Dogs must be kept on a leash, and dog owners must clean up after pets. No dogs on ball fields, playground, soccer fields, and tennis courts. No alcohol or drugs permitted. No loud music. No campfires. Fires are permitted in park grills only. Tennis courts are first come, first served with maximum use of 1 hour if others are waiting. City programs may be scheduled to use the tennis courts at certain times during the year. I have seen this in the summer, just FYI. Last one, no rollerblades, skateboards, bicycles, scooters, or other activities that could damage court surfaces or nets. That ends the list of general park regulations on the information signs there at the information stand. The 10th and final feature at Rotary Park is the neighbors. What surrounds Rotary Park? I'll talk about them in a clockwise pattern. East is up first. Rotary Park is bordered by railroad tracks on the east, but on the other side of the tracks is Perrysburg's Ohio Cat Dealer. They sell construction equipment, and you can see their big yellow machines if you walk around the entire walking path. To the south, Rotary Park is bordered by I-475 and a very tall cell tower. To the west, Rotary Park is bordered by Fort Meigs Road, along which you will find Fort Meigs Elementary School and Rivercrest Park. And finally, to the north, Rotary Park is right next to the Fort Meigs YMCA and some residential houses there on Fort Meigs Road. The parking lot for the YMCA and the parking lot for Rotary Park were once upon a time connected, but then when the inclusive playground was built, they separated them, and physically you cannot get through between the YMCA and Rotary Park. There is a sidewalk between the two, so if you have a stroller, you're able to walk from one to the other, from the YMCA to the Rotary Park and from Rotary Park to the YMCA. You just can't drive from one to the other anymore. That does it for my list of 10 features of Rotary Park, Perrysburg. I have really enjoyed watching Rotary Park take shape over the last 2 decades. I have lived in town since 2007, and this park started taking shape in 2008, a year after I moved here. It has a lot of great features, and I go there all the time in the warm weather months. The stone walking path is my favorite feature. My kids are 19 and 21 years old. They don't go to the playground. To learn more about the park features and the timeline that explains when everything was built, click on the link to the City of Perrysburg's website in the show notes. They do a fantastic job of explaining when everything was built and who sponsored each part. At this time, I will move on to the third and final part of our episode, my interview with Maggie and Jennifer from the Ability Center of Greater Toledo. We're going to be talking about the playground. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Maggie and Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer and Maggie. Welcome to the Perrysburg Podcast.
Hi, thank you for having us. I'm glad to be here.
First, I'd like you to introduce yourselves. Maggie, let's start with you.
Hi, I'm Maggie Dreier. I'm the Director of Independent Living here at the Ability Center, and I'm so excited to talk about Rotary Park today.
I'm Jennifer Engelmann, and I am the Youth and Family Services Coordinator for the Ability Center, so I take care of the programming for 12 and under.
Good to have you both with me today. This is going to be a great conversation. I know you know more about the park than I probably do. So, Maggie, let's start with you. What can you tell me about Rotary Park's inclusive playground?
Yes, we love Rotary Park. I specifically take my daughter there as well. It has so many different accessibility features, making it an all-inclusive park. And I specifically love how it was designed partially by an OT. That is really important, making sure everything was accessible. You'll have your accessible pathways in order to create that side-by-side play so children of all abilities can play together. I like to do with the accessible zip line with my daughter. And again, I love how it's all enclosed, accessible swings, all of that. So, and I know we'll get into more details as well. But it's a really great spot, whether you have a disability or not, to be able to take your family there.
Awesome. I have not tried the zip line. Are you telling me that you sit on this zip line with your daughter and ride it?
Yeah, so they also have a side by side. So one of them has the adapted swing, and then the other one is kind of like this rope sit area. And so we will absolutely zip line together.
That sounds fun. We used to have a zip line in my backyard and my kids just loved it, but I never went on it with them. That's cool. And Jennifer, what can you tell me about the inclusive playground?
I love that there are different areas for the different ages of play. So whether you have a really little child, they have a space where they can play. They have some small climbers, small slides, some musical features, and even the big kids love the musical features also. They're accessible. So if you have a child who's in a chair or a kiddo who loves to run around, they can bang on the instruments. All of the different play features have the ramps. So if you have a child who is a chair user or a child who has a difficulty, maybe climbing stairs or things like that, there are ramps to get to all the different features. And even if you are the parent who is the chair user, you can follow your child around as they play. So whether they're really small or whether they're big, there are different features at the playground for them. There's going to be something for everybody.
Very nice. I think this playground looks amazing. My kids are adults, so we actually have not used it, but we have certainly seen it there behind the YMCA. I love that hearing about how it's accessible for the children who want to play there, but it's also accessible for the parents. If you could kind of paint a picture for me, say I'm a wheelchair using parent and I'm taking my child there, how is it more accessible for me than a typical playground?
Yeah, so a great example would be our director, who is a chair user. He takes his daughters there to play. And as a chair using parent, you can go up on those accessible ramps with them and play right alongside with them. And then they also have the rubberized ground as well. So you're not having to battle the like mulch or anything like that.
Yes, mulch can be an enemy, can't it? You kind of sink down into it. I remember pushing strollers through it, and you kind of, it's kind of hard to push through. So that's a good point. That rubberized ground, that is something that is kind of new to this generation of parents because when I was a kid, I had stones, right? And then when my kids were little, we had mulch or these crushed up tire pieces, right? But what you're talking about, it's almost like a flat surface, but it's soft and rubber. Can you talk a little bit about how that might be different for people of all abilities and how it's better for them?
A person who is in a chair might have difficulty going over the mulch. They might get stuck in the mulch. So the rubberized texture is a solid surface. It makes it easier for them to get around. I would also say that one of the things that does, it does make it more accessible, but it can also make it a little hotter because of the surfacing. Just taking that into account if you have a kiddo who maybe gets hot a little, knowing that ahead of time is really good.
Right. And then anybody who's prone to falls or seizures or maybe has a difficult time walking, maybe they wear braces or have crutches or whatever the case may be, if they fall, it doesn't hurt as much, right?
Very true. It's definitely helpful for all of those circumstances.
So at this time, I think let's talk a little bit about some of the equipment that's inside. Let's talk about swings. I know that as my kids were growing up, they had these black pieces of rubber and they would sit on them in the elementary school and go ahead and swing. But then they started having these other swings that had backs on them, and it seems like the design's been improved. And so, what do you have there at Rotary Park that might help people of all abilities swing wise?
There are definitely the basic swings. So anyone who wants to swing can still walk up and swing. They have several different types of the adaptive swings. They have a swing that has a back that a person can go up and strap their child in. So if the child is not physically able to swing, hold themselves up, then there is a swing for them to use. They also have a round swing that's more of the flat type. They have several different types of swings. They have the saucer, they have the chair, they have your basic swings. Maggie, input on those?
Yeah, that was a really good recap of what they have, and it's a really great variety for children of all abilities to be able to access those.
I would also mention that there's plenty of space around the swing. So for parents to be able to push them, There's definitely space if you are a parent who's a chair user. You're going to be able to go by the swings. You're not going to get stuck in maybe the mulch under the swings. And so that space issue is really great.
One of the things that little kids like to do is they like to emulate what the big kids are doing. So, is there maybe a little spot for the little kids and maybe a spot for the bigger kids where there's larger attractions and maybe the little kids are learning from the bigger kids? So, what do you say?
Yes, I would say so. I think the park allows for everyone to play together, but there are those little tree houses type structure for the smaller children to go and play, and then the larger playground as well. But that does have different features too of like an accessible area. I believe it's a rocket ship where you can go and that moves. And then there's that accessible, it's like kind of like a carousel almost where, or a merry-go-round where you're able to go in. And yeah, really just great for children of all ages.
My son Craig loved the playground, but sometimes he had trouble with too much noise, or maybe there were too many kids around. Are there any areas that are less crowded, or maybe there's an opportunity for kids with sensory issues to experience things in a quieter way?
So there is a park shelter that's very close. It is outside of the fenced area, which the fenced area is one way in and one way out, which is great. So if you take your child out, if it's too loud or it gets too crowded, because this is a busy park, there are people oftentimes frequenting it. And that's because it's so amazing. There are some tables and some park shelters that are very close. The sidewalk that goes around it is, you can definitely take your child for a little walk if they're a little overwhelmed. And the equipment is not very crammed in. So there's definitely space to walk around inside the fenced area too. There are benches in there. So maybe being able to take them over and sit on a bench to help them soothe their calm. So there are definitely possibilities here for kids who might get a little overwhelmed with either noise or the busyness.
For kids who are challenge free, typical kids, how do you think that they react when individuals with disabilities come to this playground?
I think it could be different for everyone, but I will say the more that we are creating those inclusive spaces, the more just normal it will be for children to see people of all abilities, right alongside with them as it should be. So, I mean, I can speak from when I take my daughter there, and there are people with disabilities there. It's just pretty normal now. And her and I have those conversations too. And she knows that she can ask questions and all of that. But really, she loves to play alongside everyone. So I think it really meets the goal of an inclusive community.
Having taking different play groups there and taking my own children there, oftentimes they surprise each other with what they are able to do. And it diminishes the stigma of what they can't do. So there's this large climbing structure, which my son loves to play on because he loves to go up and down and hang like a monkey. And so he can be surprised that some of the children who maybe he would stereotype in his head that they wouldn't want to try that or play on that. He can be surprised, oh, they played on that with me, or it's great to bring that awareness. And so the more exposure they have and the more those stereotypes get diminished, the more everyone accepts that people have lots of different abilities and they like to do the same things that everyone else likes to do.
Great point. Well made. Thank you. Can I ask what impact has the Ability Center specifically had on creating this playground?
In the area of inclusive play, the Ability Center has been trying to develop leaders who would see the importance of those and then go and create more spaces like it. So in this area for the Rotary Park, when those people started to get together and discuss this, I know Wood County Plays and lots of different agencies just talk through the needs and the importance, and they made it happen. And this is, kind of the start of the inclusive playground movement in the Toledo area, because since Rotary Park, now there are others being developed in Perrysburg and all over the surrounding areas. And so this was a great way to establish the importance and the inclusivity of having play accessible to everyone.
Thank you. I can hear your advocacy. Like you like that this has come into existence. You want to see more of it. Can I ask where else in Perrysburg you've seen inclusive playgrounds?
Sure, I know that the Fort Imagination used to be maybe less accessible. It did have the fencing, which has always been a great thing for people who have children who might elope or get away from them quickly. So creating that, the space where they can be safe and play has always been great. But since they have taken that and made more accessible features there, it's like they've seen how the Rotary has changed the way that people can play together, and they're modeling those things. So now people can go over to what used to be where Imagination and Play, and now it's called Woodlands, and they can see a more accessible play there also.
Excellent. I'm happy to hear about that. I went to the Wood County Plays website, which is wcplays.org, and it looks like they have also an inclusive playground at Carter Park in Bowling Green. So that is exciting to see. And it looks like this good idea has spread. So not only is it in Bowling Green, but they're starting to build one in Fostoria too. I approve. I'm definitely an advocate for this. And I hope that these good ideas continue to spread. As we start to wrap this up, is there anything else you'd like to share about the inclusive playground at Rotary Park in Perrysburg?
I know we talked a little bit about noise previously, and I did want to highlight another feature that this park has, which is the giant music features as well. So the different drums, and I believe it's called a xylophone. So those are also accessible to people. And just another great feature that this park has as well, maybe for children who are more reserved, or I mean, just even exploring that music. So yeah, another wonderful feature.
Jennifer, anything to add?
I think that just the amount of things that this playground has really showcase the thought that went into it. It doesn't just have the swings or a slide. It has a zip line. It has a climbing structure. It has music things. It has a merry-go-round that's accessible for everyone. It has the music features, the little kid space, the big kid space. It's got area to run. So it really is a playground that has just so many things for children to do. Be prepared to spend a lot of time there playing.
Nice. I like that call to action. Be prepared to spend some time playing there. Nice. All right, ladies, thank you so much for being here with me on the Perrysburg Podcast. Take care.
Thank you for having us.
You're welcome. Thanks again to Maggie Dreier and Jennifer Engelmann for being my guests on the Perrysburg Podcast. I appreciate their insights and their advocacy. They gave me a reason to stop by the playground inside the park and take some pictures. Usually, I just walk around that stone walking path. I can see the playground, but I've never gone inside it before now. I saw everything they were talking about, and I am really impressed. Big thanks to everyone who spent their time, their talent, and their treasure making the playground at Rotary Park possible. It is amazing. I hope you enjoyed hearing about Rotary Park today. Whether you're a prospective, new, or current Perrysburg resident, check out Rotary Park sometime. And if you're a visitor, make sure that this is one of your stops. It is one of Perrysburg's great parks. Thanks for listening to episode 47 of the Perrysburg Podcast. Please visit perrysburgpodcast.com to read the show notes. In the show notes today, you'll find links to the City of Perrysburg's website, Perrysburg Rotary Club, the Ability Center, Wood County Plays, a link to the YouTube version of this episode, the link to reserve the Rotary Park shelter, and more. If you'd like to be notified each time a new episode of the Perrysburg Podcast comes out, sign up for the newsletter on perrysburgpodcast.com. You can also subscribe to or follow the Perrysburg Podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Go ahead and share this episode with anyone you think might enjoy it, and I thank you for listening today. I'll talk to you next week.